This is a bonus episode of Whiskey Whereabouts, a sort of addendum to my recent review of this bottle, the classic Laddie. I just reviewed this bottle on the channel a couple of days ago. If you haven't seen it, put a link up here and in the description below. And I talk a lot on that video about how this bottle does not have an age statement, but that Bruichladdich has provided a lot of transparency on their website. Take a little 5-digit code printed on the bottle, you enter it in there, and you get a lot of information about all the casks that went into the vatting that led to the batch that resulted in that bottle corresponding to the code. And I shared the screenshots with all the information about the casks. And I pointed out that only some of those casks had distillation dates listed. In the case of my bottle, it was 2015. So with the bottling date, it was 8 year. But the majority of the casks did not have the dates. And a sharp-eyed or well-informed viewer in the comments pointed out that Bruichladdich provided some explanatory language in the margins here on the site when you get this information, explaining what information they're providing and why. And they state that they are giving us the distillation date of the youngest whiskey in the vatting, and that they are prohibited from sharing those dates for any of the older whiskey, older than the youngest whiskey in the vatting, with us. And so, effectively, what we have by accessing this information is the same information we would have if the bottle had an age statement. And I had thrown out a different interpretation of the lack of this information, but reviewing this explanation, it stopping and considering, it totally makes sense given we have had similar problems with transparency before. Compass Box ran afoul of the governing authorities with transparency. So this makes sense. The reason I wanted to sort of follow up on the video was to point this out, because this is a batchy whiskey, meaning that it can fluctuate from batch to batch, and you may or may not be interested in what the sort of de facto age statement might be on your particular bottle. And the good news is that you can access this information before you even buy the bottle. This code is printed right here on the bottom of the bottle, right next to the bottle code. It's not printed on the underside of the stopper where you have to unseal the bottle first. And when you go on the website, you don't need to create an account or enter a proof of purchase. You just enter the code and you get the information. Meaning, when you're shopping and considering purchasing a classic Laddie, you can check that code out, pull out your phone, and get that information standing there in the aisle before you ever pull the trigger. And so there's no guarantee it's going to be the same as the batch that I have. I was high on this bottle in my review, and I've got a nice-ish sort of 8 year. Why don't they just put the 8 on the bottle? I think that, again, I'm speculating again, but I honestly think that 8 year on an unpeated whiskey isn't that much of a selling point, right? When we think of sort of regularly available 8 years, we think of probably the more peated whiskeys, age a little differently, that Lagavulin, that Ardbeg, 8 year. And number two, this gives them the flexibility to make the batches how they like, as long as they're satisfied with it, identifying that maybe that number's 7, maybe it's higher. Who knows from batch to batch? But without having to rebrand it, they have that flexibility. So again, I like to give credit where it's due. I mentioned that in the original video, and good job, Bruichladdich, sharing that sort of level of transparency with us about the classic Laddie. So, normal episode on Friday. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll see you then.